Okay, we're continuing in the Zera Shimshon and Parshat Devarim Ois Dalet. We're going to learn now the Musar that Moshe Rabbeinu has been giving to Klal Yisrael right now, and Ois Dalet is referring to the Chet HaMeraglim. So the Zera Shimshon begins, Vayitav be'enei hadavar. Moshe Rabbeinu tells Klal Yisrael that your request to send Meraglim into Eretz Yisrael was good in my eyes. Pirush Rashi. Rashi explains, if that's the case, if it was a valid request and Moshe Rabbeinu felt that it was a good request, that it said, you know what, sounds like a good idea, Lama Amar B'Tachachas, why is he giving Musar to them? Right now, Moshe Rabbeinu is giving Musar, the whole Parshat Devarim, and actually the whole Seder Devarim, is Musar to Klal Yisrael. And Chizuk, so if that's the case, giving Musar to Klal Yisrael on something that you thought was a good idea doesn't make sense. Even though it's true that it resulted in a chet, a terrible chet, and a terrible punishment, but Lamaisa, Moshe Rabbeinu said, I agreed with your idea, it seems to be a good idea. Mashal Adam, Rashi says it's compared to a person, sell me your chamar, zeh, amalehen, noisnuli al nisoin, let me try it out, amalehen. Afani, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hoidati levrechem, I agreed to your request to send Meraglim, Shema tichsru bechem, because I was hoping that you would change your mind. Kishetiru she'edi ma'akev. It's sort of like reverse psychology, Rashi seems to say. By me agreeing to your request, that sort of Moshe Rabbeinu was hoping that it would disarm their tremendous taiva to go and send Meraglim. But you did not retract your request, Moshe Rabbeinu said, at kan l'shani. That's what Rashi says. So Zera Shimshon says, Kosha, the hod mikol makom, even if this was Moshe Rabbeinu's taina, that really I agreed to your request in the hope that you will change your mind, then it doesn't make sense to say it was a good idea. Because according to what Moshe Rabbeinu is explaining to Klal Yisrael, it seems that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying it was better that you didn't ask. You asked, so I said yes, right? Sometimes the kid wants something, you say, okay, no problem. As soon as the kid realizes that there's no more rebellions, right? There's no more reason to rebel, and the parents are with you, many times they drop what they want. So that's what it seems that Moshe Rabbeinu was really saying, really shouldn't have asked. You asked, so I said, okay. But that's not what the words Vayitav be'enei hadavar seem to mean. The words Vayitav be'enei hadavar seem to indicate that Moshe Rabbeinu actually thought it was a good idea. On the contrary, like we explained, it seems that Moshe Rabbeinu was saying that it was good that you asked. And that he said, not only that, it's good that you asked, better than just to have emun in Hashem. This is not what Rashi is explaining why Moshe Rabbeinu was giving the Musar. So make sure we have it clear. Moshe Rabbeinu tells Klal Yisrael, when he's giving the Musar, you asked to send Meraglim, and I thought it was a good idea. Vayita be'enei hadavar. Rashi explains it doesn't literally mean that. It means that Moshe Rabbeinu said, I agree to your request in the hope that you would change your minds and not go, and you didn't. You actually continued and persisted to send Meraglim. Says the Zera Shimshon, that doesn't make sense in the words Vayita be'enei hadavar. The words Vayita be'enei hadavar means that Moshe Rabbeinu really thought it was a good idea, and he was happy that they asked. Another question, says the Zera Shimshon, when Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Meraglim in Bamidbar, Uri'isem esa aretz, go and look at the land. Hachazeku, are they strong? Harafe, are they weak? Hama'atu, are there a lot of people? Are there a little bit amount of people? So says the Zera Shimshon a very pashut question. These are common things that every spy in kindergarten knows, that when you're going to spy a land, these are the first things you look for. Are the cities fortified? Are there guns in the front of the city? Are there guns in the back of the city? Right? Are there a lot of soldiers at the border? Are there not so many soldiers at the border? Where are the defenses? Those are all very simple questions to ask. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu specifically say these items? Are there a lot of people? There are not so many people. Anybody that Moshe Rabbeinu would have sent, or any spy that you send, the general, the commander, there's certain basic things that every spy understands, and he's taught in school what to look for. So the commander, or the leader, when they send the spies, they're usually looking for things that you would not necessarily notice, right? Or things that are unusual. Things that are automatic, that's the first thing in the report. He should have told him, Stam, go search the land. And automatically, you would have known. The Zera Shimshon now, in his classic way of building pilpul, is going to zag to something completely unrelated. So we had two kashas. Kasha number one is the words Vayita be'enei hadovar seem to indicate that Moshe Rabbeinu was happy that Klal Yisrael asked to send meraglim. So if that's the case, says the Zera Shimshon, why are you giving them Musar? Second question is in Parshat Shlach, when Moshe Rabbeinu sends the meraglim, he gives them a specific list, of a checklist. Look for A, look for B, look for C, D. Says the Zera Shimshon, those are Parshat things. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have to tell them. These are things that every spy 101 knows. So now the Zera Shimshon is going to bring a halacha in Choshen Mishpat. Kol sheskimu ala b'nei Medina shehu mum. Anything that in this community they agree is a defect in an item, right? For example, in certain communities they're more makbid, could be based on their wealth, on certain items, and in other communities they're not so makbid. Okay, for example, you buy a piece of meat. A second cut piece of meat in certain communities are like a busha to serve. Other communities, a second piece of meat is very good to serve. It's a very chashuv azach. So therefore, when a person buys an item and he wants to return it, claiming there's a defect, so it could depend. Is this considered a defect in our community? So then he automatically can return it. It's self-understood that when he bought this item, he didn't want this defect because everybody in our neighborhood agrees that this is a defect. But if everybody in this community thinks that this is okay and they accept it, so it's not so simple that you could return it. So it says the Zera Shimshon, quoting Choshen Mishpat, Siman Reish Lamed Beis, Kol sheskimu ala b'nei HaMedina shehu mum, shemachzirun by that you could return it. Hamekach zeh machzirun. He could return it because in our community, when I say I want rib roast, I want first cut, not second cut. And if you sold me second cut, that's not accepted, and the storekeeper has to return it. If in our community we like second cut and it's not considered a problem, it's not so simple that I could return it unless I stipulated originally I only want this piece of meat, and that is for any type of item. Unless he explained originally. Anybody that buys and sells without explaining specifically what they're looking for, he's relying on what people understand, right? For example, people buy new in box or open in box. So there's a certain expectation of what open in box means. Open in box means that I just opened the box, but the item was never used. If in certain areas open in box means that the item was used once or twice, so then the individual cannot complain that the item was used once or twice. Again, it depends. It's subjective to the general understanding unless it was explained prior. So based on that halacha, the Zera Shimshon now is going to tie everything together. Moshe Rabbeinu said, the Klal Yisrael, came to Moshe Rabbeinu to send spies. And they agreed amongst themselves what would be considered a mum. Moshe Rabbeinu gave them a certain amount of simanim to see if that would be considered a mum or not. Shapir Rashi b'Parshat Shlach. V'oid yeh nikra mum im ha'aretz tiyeh raza im lo yeh ba'etz. If it's skinny, there's no plantings, there's no trees, that's not a good land. Mishum hachi hutzach Moshe lafarish la'imach chazik v'rapa. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu specifically gave them this checklist, because this checklist is what we agree is considered a mum. It's true that this is what people look for, but when you're going to come back, as we're going to see, and you're going to say, well, the trees are on this side and not on that side, and there's mountains there and not mountains here, and it rains at night and not in the day, that's not considered a mum. That's not a reason not to go into Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu gave them a checklist, says Zera Shimshon, and through this checklist, that would be considered a valid mum, a valid problem that would prevent or Klal Yisrael or allow Klal Yisrael a valid reason not to go into Eretz Yisrael. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu give these specific items? Because he knew that Hashem says you're not going to find them there. And so that's why Moshe Rabbeinu said, if Hashem already promised it's going to be a land of milk and honey and wheat and barley and all these things, so obviously go check if there isn't, because then there's a mum. But Moshe Rabbeinu was not concerned that they were going to find it. The Meraglim came and said the opposite. They brought these big fruits. They said there's giants. Moshe Rabbeinu said, who cares if there's giants? Hashem is fighting for us anyways. That's not a reason, right, for us not to go in. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, yes, if you would have followed my checklist to check if these are these mum, that we all agree are mumim, that are found in Eretz Yisrael, then you would have been right. But you twisted it around, says the Zera Shimshon, and therefore you did not follow what I told you to do. Memela, that's why he was giving them Musar. So we answered the two questions beautifully. Moshe Rabbeinu originally said taka was a very good idea. Let's taka check if there are these mumim that we all agree are mumim, and if Yisrael has these defects, then we could tell Hashem not so fast. Because Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't concerned. He knew that they were not going to find it. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu specifically said these mumim. The Meraglim came and they twisted it around and they said other things. And therefore, that's why Moshe Rabbeinu was giving them Musar. And Memela, the Zera Shimshon beautifully explains this part in Parshat Devarim.